now for Movie Spotlight, your weekly ticket to the world of film, from the hottest blockbusters to hidden indie gems and everything in between. And joining us today in the studio are our resident movie critics, Jason Bechervaise. Welcome, Jason.
Oh, it's great to be here.
And Marc Raymond. Welcome back, Marc. Great to have you.
Good to see you.
Well, let's jump right in. Jason, we're starting with you this week, and your pick is the independent film The Initial Memories. It's directed by An Sung-kyung and Jang Gon-jae, and this is the film that's being screened at festivals.
Yeah, that's right. Although not a vast number, it premiered at the Seoul Independent Film Festival. This is back in 2023. You know, sometimes these movies can take a little while to get into screens on a theatrical release, and they went to the Namdo Film Festival earlier this year. It's an intriguing film, and I was surprised I hadn't seen it or really heard about it, because it's helmed by two established independent filmmakers, two of whom I am familiar with. An Sung-kyung, who has made a couple of features, Young Hyun's Quartet, and also Jang Gon-jae, who he's a familiar face on the festival circuit here. He was in Busan for Because I Hate Korea, which opened it a couple of years ago, and both of them have experienced success. Like I said, on the festival circuit. An Sung-kyung, Pasca, which premiered at Busan, 2013, and Jang Gon-jae's A Midsummer's Fantasia was also in Busan as well, actually. And so, given the two directors involved, it's unsurprising that actually this film it's essentially split into different chapters. And so when you have, two or three directors making a film, that's quite often how they're structured,
okay.
Kind of an omnibus feature where these segments kind of, come together. And so, initially we see the characters, basically two young women and a man, and it comes across as a bit of a love triangle, because they're down in Muju, because they're all kind of part of this acting workshop, and they're visiting one of the characters' hometown. And then the next chapter is where you see them part of this kind of acting or actors workshop, and they're basically tasked with creating the first memory of their character, and that's where or their friend's character, and that's where the Muju segment fits in. And then the final segment is basically where they're kind of acting this out in this kind of climax. The Korean title of the film is called Chojo의 기억. So hence, what I've been talking about in terms of the premise. And it stars Seo Dong-gun, Lee Keum-ju, Kang Min-ju, Baek Yo-sun, and Jo Eun-kyung. And it's produced by Jang Gon-jae's production company, Moscow. And if I'm not mistaken, the film's producer, I like to look through the credits, but I didn't get a chance to look through the credits properly before I got here today. But the producer of the film, Yoon Hee-young, I think he plays a cameo in the film. He plays a producer. I'm pretty confident that's him.
Okay. I have a bit of a two-part question now for you next. How common is it for directors to team up on projects like this? And since you follow both of these directors' work, how well do these styles come together in this particular film?
Yeah, they're two different filmmakers. Jang Gon-jae, in his films, not least A Midsummer's Fantasia, you've got these characters kind of walking around, and they're developing friendships, relationships, and there's lots of in this film especially, lots of dialogue in this new film. And so in that sense, I think it's an interesting mix, because the other director, An Sung-kyung, she made a movie called Hyun's Quartet, which also features a kind of an actor's workshop, if my memory serves me rightly. Forgive me, a lot of these films kind of mesh together. When you watch hundreds of independent films, that's what happens. But so the kind of the premise of the film, you can feel both directors' styles, both thematically and also visually quite an understated style. These characters often, they're talking about love, memories, relationships, life. You see a lot of that in Korean films. Kind of a bit of Hong Sang-soo in there. I'd be curious to hear what Marc says. Marc is a Hong Sang-soo experts. I think it does kind of work. I think the first two segments for me work better. I wasn't so keen by the final bit. It comes across as a bit staged, although that's the whole point. But I do think it works actually. I quite liked it. These characters are well crafted, and it's well acted. It's an interesting mix.
Mark, before we jump over to your thoughts, Jason, you just mentioned you've watched hundreds and hundreds of independent...
Probably thousands now.
Thousands and thousands of independent Korean films. How does this one compare to the others that you've seen?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's obviously character-driven. A lot of indie films are, focusing on, characters' relationships. I just love sometimes this is when I was watching this film this week, I was like, you have these conversations that they have, and sometimes they kind of meander all over the place, right? I'm not sure you'd see these kind of conversations in British films, if you know what I mean. But in Korean films, quite often you have these kind of this dialogue where they're talking about all sorts of different things. Sometimes it can be quite deep, and sometimes poetic. And you do see that in here, actually, especially not least in the climax and throughout the film. And so in that sense, it does share, some of the sensibilities you do get with Korean independent cinema. It's not really, I mean, a lot of independent films these days, particularly by the younger generation, this is not, these filmmakers are a little bit older, but they tend to tackle some of the, the difficulties issues facing, young people these days, getting on the social ladder and poverty and things like that. This film doesn't really delve into that. It's more about relationships between each other and also their families as well. Although you don't actually see their families in the film, they just talk about it, and obviously it's about their first memories as children. So hence the title, like I said earlier. But yeah, I mean it's not really delving into any particular kind of social issues in some way that many independent films do.
And Mark, as Jason said, you're also a Korean independent film scholar. What did you make of The Initial Memories?
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting film, I think. Ultimately, it's the way it's kind of a bit of what we would call a sociodrama. It's kind of about these actors, but the actors who are getting together in these workshops. But it feels also like it's kind of group therapy in a way. It has that real feel to it.
Especially the end.
Yeah, especially the end, like the childhood. But everything about the movie is all about how all these characters have these kind of deep psychological wounds. And so it feels a bit like these little individual psychodramas. And I found through the first part of the film, I found it a little frustrating because the first 40 minutes is just a film. And then it breaks off, and then they kind of are watching the film they just watched, and then it becomes kind of this, then the actors are talking about the roles they played and all this stuff, and that didn't work. I felt like individual scenes were strong, but it wasn't building too much. But by the end it does, I think, work. The last scene, even though like Jason said, it's kind of stagey and all, like just the point, but I do think it does make the film thematically cohere, at least to some degree, and makes it a bit more than just these good parts that don't add up to anything. By the end, it does add up to something. And it is very much about, the group dynamics of this 37 actors and then their acting teacher. And it's really about, I think as much that group dynamic as well as the individual people. And so for that part, I think it does work in the end, even though it's not a great film, but an interesting one. And I like both directors as well, like Jason mentioned. So yeah, and it does feel like both influences of you can see previous aspects of their other work in this one as well. So yeah, I'd recommend it.
You have to stick it out though. You have to watch.
Yeah, it has like frustrating parts, but I think it does add up at the end.
Yeah, I had a feeling that Mark wouldn't like the first bit, or maybe the other parts. Yeah, somewhat more.
Jason, how do you see this film performing in Korea?
I mean, there might be some ultimately, it's a small movie, so I don't see it necessarily. It won't do big business, that's for sure. But it is a film that is worth checking out. Even though it's one of these films where it doesn't necessarily get great festival play. it won't attract this, a great deal of interest, but actually it is quite an intriguing film that is well worth your time.
Okay. Turning now to our big foreign release this week, it's Now You See Me 3, or as it's now known in English, Now You See Me, Now You Don't. It's the third installment in this series that began back in 2013. Marc, can you tell us about it?
Yeah, this is the long-awaited, or at least long-delayed, third installment of this. I guess it's kind of a franchise now. The Now You See Me films. It's the last since there hasn't been one of these films. The sequel was in 2016, but many of the original stars do return, such as Jesse Eisenberg, Woody Harrelson, Dave Franco, Isla Fisher, as the kind of the four horsemen of magic, who are basically modern-day Robin Hoods, using their skills to steal from the rich, give to the masses. And here they're joined by three younger illusionists, played by some up-and-coming actors: Justice Smith, who was in I Saw the TV Glow, Ariana Greenblatt, who played a role in Barbie, and Dominic Sessa, who was quite impressive in The Holdovers from a couple of years back. And so they face off against the villain, Veronica Vandenberg, who is played by Rosamund Pike, who is the head of this South African diamond company, and a generally destructive representative of the upper class. That's basically her role in the film. And so yeah, it's there also are kind of small roles for Morgan Freeman and Lizzie Kaplan, a few others from earlier installments in the series. And it's, even though I hadn't seen the previous two films, it's, I think, pretty much in the same vein as the earlier films and their plots and concerns.
Sounds like a fantastic cast.
Yes.
Sounds like quite a good plot. As this is the third of these films. What is your history? I know you just said you haven't seen the first two with the franchise. And what did you, I suppose, think of this latest film?
Yeah, not only have I not seen the first two films, weirdly, I had not even heard of them, which is really strange because they made over $300 million each of them, the first one and the sequel. Yeah. And they just had completely flown under by, I didn't even remember advertisements for them or anything like that. So it's, and I like the actors here. I like Jesse Eisenberg quite a bit. And all of the newcomers are also quite good. But I can't say I like the film that much. The big problem is really the script. Like, the cast is really good. The the younger actors, Smith and Sessa in particular, are very charismatic. And whatever interest that the film has is in the performances, really. But I did, and I'm into the general anti-capitalist message. It wants to feed me, that's fine. But it's all very superficial, and it tries. And the problem is, I think if it had just stayed on that level, it would have been fine. But it does very awkwardly, for certain scenes, tries to make you have an emotional connection to these characters, or tries to make it deeper than it is. And you're just like, those scenes just do not work at all.
They
like,
fall
there's just
flat.
nothing. Yeah, there's just nothing there because it's ultimately just a silly kind of heist kind of movie. And if it stayed more on that level, it might have been more effective. And yeah, there's just a lot of like dialogue scenes that are just pretty bad. And there's not much energy or stakes to any of it either. So I guess it's a passable way to pass the time. Like, it's not boring or anything for the most part. Oh, no. But just a few scenes are just like kind of like roll your eyes at, and then you move on. And yeah, it's a decent enough time, I guess, but I can't give it a hearty recommendation just because there just isn't much to it. It's just like, but yeah, if you're looking for something super light and breezy, sure, you can spend 2 hours in worse ways.
So maybe overall watchable, maybe ultimately forgettable sequel.
Yes, very forgettable.
Right. Jason, have you seen the film or the previous films? And if so, what did you think? How did they compare?
I saw the first one. I don't have a recollection of watching the second one.
Oh, also forgettable.
Doesn't mean I remember watching the first one. But it's okay, actually. I don't know, I had a long day, and I was just wanting to turn my brain off and relax and watch an entertaining movie, and it just does that. Okay. And it actually has a great opening sequence, and I quite like the climax. In the middle, it loses a lot of steam, and you can kind of see where it's all going. But that's what's so great about these films, is the tricks, right? And so it gets going very, very quickly. And then, as the plot kind of develops, it loses that momentum. But because, there's a few moments where it kind of livens up a bit. But ultimately, it's not until the end of the film that kind of really brings you back into the story. But nevertheless, even in those kind of, less compelling moments, I kind of enjoyed it. I was in the mood for it. It doesn't, I was never really bored. And yeah, I was just, as I came out, I was like, when was the last time I sat and watched a movie where I came out thinking, yeah, it's not great, but it was entertaining, and I honestly, I can't remember the last time that I experienced a film like that, a Hollywood movie anyway. So
sometimes you need a movie like that after a long day
sometimes,
too.
yeah, exactly. Sometimes you just want that film, and it was that movie for that particular moment. Will I go and watch it again? Probably not.
Will you remember it next week?
Yeah, you know what? I'll probably come back on the show like when we're reviewing Now You See Me Fall. Like, did I watch that movie? You're like reviewing the show. Oh, okay, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's about my experience too. Yeah, it's not a bad film by any means. It's just kind of light, forgettable, and yeah, it lags a bit. It could definitely be better for sure. It's not even by what it's going for. It's not. The script is quite terrible, but it's not there for the script, I guess. And yeah, the set pieces are decent enough.
And it features a Formula One racing car. These days F1 racing is big, huge, and so that's in there. So clearly that was very deliberate.
Yes.
Well, that brings us to the end of this week's movie spotlight. Thank you to our critics for joining us. Thank you, Jason Bechervaise.
Thank you for having me.
And Marc Raymond.
Thank you.